I see this as another example of poor governance. Coming from the prime minister himself, one assumes that in this centralized administrative control that he has, everything is eventually got his go ahead. Mr. Modi's got another example of uh, egg on his face, really. And this follows many legislative disasters, including the Farm Bill and the Land Acquisition Act. But the latest one has to be a calamitous one for the BJP, even in terms of not just poor, legislative authoritarianism, but also in showing that the BJP is appearing to be very much blind completely at the moment, like a deer hit by the headlights after the 2024 underperformance in the Lok Sabha elections. It's
Hmm.
pretty apparent to anyone that Rahul Gandhi and everybody raised a very pertinent point, which is that principally, if you're having lateral entrance, you got to be consistent with what the constitutional provisions are in terms of reservations. I don't think
Hmm.
anybody says that at a time, if a government feels that it needs certain specialists or it requires talent from outside of the regular bureaucracy, feel free enough to get it, which was, by the way, initiated even during Dr. Manmohan Singh's government. But it has to be consistent with the policy of ensuring that people get opportunities who come from different stratas of society.
Right.
And here is the point, Barkha, before the others come in. The Constitution of India is actually a welfare state driven constitution. In fact,
Hmm.
one of the places where the Constitution encourages state intervention is in terms of reservations, both in employment as well as in education. And if you look at the one simple example of the Bihar caste survey, it tells you that around 85% of India is between the OBCs, the scheduled caste, and the scheduled tribes. And herein lies the irony that for a government that talks about a lot of lectures on inclusive growth, etc., they are continuing to brazenly isolate large sections of India's disempowered and disadvantaged
Okay,
from
can I
voting
ask you something
unfathomable.
before? Can I ask you something briefly? We have Arjun Meghwal saying that look, Manmohan Singh was a lateral entrant. Nandan Nilekani, who actually contested on a Congress ticket, is the architect of the Aadhaar program, then in a way embraced by the BJP as well, was a lateral entrant. In his
That's right.
letter, Minister Jatinder Singh to the UPSC chairman makes a reference to what he calls the super bureaucracy that was the National Advisory Council, which was a kind
Mhm.
of parallel government, some said, run by Sonia Gandhi. So
Mhm.
lateral entrants are not new to the Congress culture. It's just that times have changed. Your politics or the politics of the party you support have changed. How do you respond to that?
Barkha, that's such a poor argument coming from the right wing ecosystem, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
A Dr.
Yeah.
Manmohan Singh and Nilden Nenekani, the once one swallow doesn't a summer make. Here we are talking about several
Dr. Manmohan
post.
Singh was a two-time prime minister of the UPA.
No, no,
He
no, no.
wasn't
But
just a
we are
marginal.
talking.
He wasn't just a marginal Congress leader, and he came into public life as a lateral entrant. He didn't sit for a UPSC exam,
Yeah,
and he
but
became
that's
the prime
very
minister of the country for two consecutive terms.
well. Frankly, between you and me, and I'm not saying this in a lighter vein, one of the 45 that they wanted to recruit could have been a better prime minister than Mr. Modi is. But that is not the point.
Oh,
There's a
my
larger
goodness.
point that I wish to
Hmm.
make. That one
Hmm.
one Dr. Manmohan Singh or one some other bureaucrat who came in like Nandan Nilekani, they are not
Yeah.
some kind of an institutional, shall we say, amendment happening to recruitment. What is the issue here? The issue here is this: that bottom line, this is an attempt to recruit 45 people across 24 central ministries. There is a deficit of talent, according to Mr. Modi's government, in the bureaucracy. I'm sure that the IAS and the IPS should be worried about how Mr. Modi sees the current crop of UPSC talent, where we have seen another scam happening, by the way. So here is the larger point. Under the UPA, there were UPA initiated it. I don't think anybody's backing out of that, Barkha. But look at the BJP's counter argument. It's so absolutely fragile. They're quoting two examples. They're not talking about an institutional, shall we say, correction being made, which doesn't respect constitutional
Okay.
provisions of reservation. And what is wrong with
Okay.
that? The Constitution
Okay.
tells the state kindly ensure parity in terms of social justice. And that's the way it should be.
Okay, I want to just refer once to this letter that has now made its way into the public domain before coming to Sandeep Ghosh. Please, if we can show the letter. There are two couple of things that actually really leap out. One is the reference to the National Advisory Council, and the other is that this is very much Modi's directive, and it kind of seems to indicate, Sandeep, that lateral entry could be back just with a very specified sort of framework to make it clear that it doesn't actually disturb reservation. Now, my question to you is, this could have been done anyway in the public communication. The public communication, instead of taking this back, could have simply said that this applies only to jobs available in the general quota, or something. There could have been an addendum. The taking back of it seems very much, will seem to the government's critics to be panicky, will seem to be a political victory that Rahul Gandhi has scored. How do you see what's happened?
Certainly, Barkha, optics-wise, it is a disaster, and there'll be too many, this kind of missteps which the government is doing too soon, within about 2 months of its coming to power. So these steps seem to be not well thought through, in that way. And I think I'll come to that in a bit. This, to my mind, more than this raises some much larger question about how the government is functioning, or what this Modi 3.0 is all about, as from whatever we have seen so far. But when you look at this particular, I totally agree with you. There could have been clarification, there could have been amendments to clarify the situation, and there could have been also explanations very clearly given. Now, when you're talking of 45 recruits, out of, I think there are about 1,000 UPSC candidates recruited each year, 1,000 or more. So you're not even talking about 5%. If 5% are also not being taken through this quota system, I don't think you're vitiating the principles at all. So many such explanations could have been given. Because the other bit is, when you're recruiting, why different from Sanjay, why I don't think this Manmohan Singh and Montek Singh Ahluwalia or Nandan Nilekani, these are to some extent false equivalences, because very clearly, these direct recruits are merit-based. Now, when you're recruiting somebody on a merit base, you cannot generally say, okay, merit-based, but within that, I'm going to look for caste, creed, other denominations. So, that is very self-contradictory, the whole process. So I don't agree on that at all. Now, whether this whole idea of direct recruits is a good idea or not, that can be a separate debate. I personally have great reservations. Mr. Das comes from the corporate world, so does Dheeraj, and Sanjay too. We know even in the corporate world, it is not easy to get lateral entrance into an embedded system. So you find, even in organizations like Tata's, when they try to get in direct recruits at the top, it's a DNA which throws people out. So you could be setting people up for failure when you're bringing them in. So it requires a lot more thinking than just one move to get. So there are a host of problems, but I'll just take a minute more, Barkha. But the bigger issue about all these so-called U-turns, which is happening, it is showing an unsure government. And contrary to just the opposition's thing, I think the bigger issue is coming. The government is being weighed down by differences within its own ranks, and whether it's the allies. But I would say it's not just the allies, because a lot of decisions, like say the indexation, etc., met with a lot of resistance or dissatisfaction even within BJP's own ranks, states like Maharashtra. And I don't think the government is really getting its act together or landing on its feet as yet.
Now, you raised this point about how this U-turn raises questions about how Modi 3.0 is functioning. I think the spillover effect from the election campaign, Constitution badal denge, they're out to get your reservations, something that the opposition was able to use very effectively, especially when it came to the Dalit vote, is still making its presence felt. For example, we have Charanjit Singh writing, first a mistake and then acknowledgement of the mistake, but the message that the government is anti-reservation is gathering ground. Now, I think this is what has panicked perhaps the government, because they panicked when they didn't pay enough attention to it in the 2024 campaign, it cost them. Now, this statement came from Chirag Paswan. This is before the U-turn. I want you to listen in, and then I'll come to Gurcharan and Dheeraj. Take a look.
मैं और मेरी पार्टी कतई सहमत नहीं है। आज जिस तरीके से कुछ पदों के नियुक्तियों के लिए, डायरेक्ट बहाली के लिए सीधा वहां से डिमांड्स मांगी गई है, जिसमें आरक्षण का ध्यान नहीं रखा गया है, इस बात के मेरी पार्टी भी पूरी तरीके से खिलाफ है। सरकार का अंग होने के नाते सरकार के उचित प्लेटफॉर्म पे इस कंसर्न को मेरी पार्टी की तरफ से हम लोगों ने भी दर्ज कराया है। आने वाले दिनों में भी इसके ऊपर मजबूत आवाज हम लोगों की तरफ से उठाई जाएगी। कोई भी सरकारी पद की नियुक्ति अगर निकलती है तो उसमें आरक्षण के प्रावधानों का ध्यान रखा जाना जरूरी है। अनुसूचित जाति, जनजाति, पिछड़ा वर्ग का जो आरक्षण जिस तरीके से सरकारी नौकरियों में जिस तरीके से चलता आ रहा है, हर नियुक्ति में इसका ध्यान रखा जाए, ये अनिवार्य है। और अगर ऐसा नहीं रखा जाता है, जो कि आज हम लोग को भी देखने को मिला है, इसके लिए सरकार उचित कार्रवाई जरूर करेगी।
So Gurcharan, oops, let me just mute Gurcharan while I ask my question. Gurcharan, we have the first here visible illustration of a coalition government. It hadn't looked or felt like that up until now. But when you see Chirag Paswan come out and speak like this, you are reminded of the fact that the BJP does not have a majority of its own. So there are two dimensions to this conversation. One is the political, and the other is the scheme itself, right? And I'm not saying the scheme is dead and buried, but it seems that it will come back with caveats. It will come back with sort of exemptions on reservation, and making it clear that only those jobs in the general quota are open for lateral entry. Gurcharan Das, please go ahead.
The mistake here, as is the usual mistake that this government makes, you need to sell your ideas. You needed to sell to the farmers the farm laws, and you need to sell this idea. But to say, and it's not a difficult sell. It's like telling people that, look, if you're what Sanjay Jha calls social justice, if you were forming the Indian cricket team on the basis of social justice, you'd need to take, everybody to be included in the 11 based on caste reservations. Now, that's a ridiculous thought. And so I feel this is a real shame, because we have lost another chance for upgrading the quality of decision making in areas which require high skill and experience. And all modern governments do this kind of thing. And so it's easy to blame politics, easy to blame democracy for this sort of thing. But also we have to recognize that the economics has also failed us. That over the last 30 years, we have grown at 6%, which is damn good for a democracy. But we haven't created the jobs that should have come with it. We have not created an industrial revolution. And if we can create an industrial, and now we can create it, if we create that industrial revolution, we can't just depend on services to be the driving engine.
So you say
be in a problem. We'll be in a mess.
You say the government should have sold this better. That's exactly what they failed to do with the farm laws, which they too had to take back. And we'll come back to what the government could have said or should have said before it actually rolled out the advertisements. Dheeraj, your responses, do you think it's a real shame? Do you think it's inevitable given the politics? What does it even mean? Because, I mean, experts are not going to stop coming into government, right? You have plenty of them in government already. What does it actually mean to take back these advertisements?
So I mean, just a couple of, specifics, almost micro points. One, that this has been done before. In the previous term of the government, 9 lateral hires were made at the joint secretary level. In the Niti Aayog, where I have worked, several lateral hires have been made and continue to be made at various levels. There's an entire cadre of young professionals now which works in different ministries who started by Niti Aayog. They're also external people. So it's not new. So I suspect the government went ahead with this because they've already done it before. It's just that they didn't realize that there are now allies on their side and they're not in the majority. I doubt if this would have been rolled back if Rahul Gandhi had just said it, because it's been done before. It's not the first time this government is doing lateral recruitments, and people have served. That's the first point. The second point is that this is not lateral entry on a permanent basis. These are all contract jobs. They're 3 to 5 years, and then you go back to where you came from, or to another walk of life. So this is not like UPSC recruitment for the IAS, IPS, IRS, and so on, where you're recruited at the age of whatever, in your 20s, and then you serve till you retire. These are not in the same kind of jobs. These are very much temporary jobs. So I mean, if you're going to take this argument forward, the government will not hire joint secretaries or directors or deputy secretaries. They'll just hire experts as consultants in some other way, because they need the expertise, right? So I think bringing them into the formal system, the idea is that they can be part of the decision making. Otherwise, you're purely advisory from the outside. But if you have a position, then you take, you play a role in the movement of the file. As this is not at all something which has not been done before. This is not a permanent government job. This is not getting in people. This is not parity with.
Are you surprised, Dheeraj, that it was rolled back, or do you think the government just thought that because they've done it before, got away with it, or whatever? It didn't receive any negative response last time. They probably thought the same this time. Coming to you in a second, Gurcharan. Yeah.
Yeah. I know. I think the government just went ahead because they probably didn't realize that this is a different polity now, post 2024.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it was not something they thought they needed to sell because they've done it before. And as they've rightly said, the Congress has also done it. Everybody has done it before. It's not something new. So I think, yes, what you said earlier, the politics of the fact that this government has been pinned down on reservations through the election campaign. And I think now the allies, I suspect Chirag Paswan spoke out, but I'm sure even Nitish Kumar would have had his discomfort, given that Bihar is going to an election next year and caste is a major issue there. So I think it's the juncture more than anything else, and the fact that the government, I think it may have slipped their mind that there's a new political reality in town.
It may have slipped their mind that there's a new political reality in town. Sanjay Jha, then Gurcharan, and then Sandeep. Sanjay, go ahead. Sanjay, before you go ahead, can I add a question?
Yeah.
Can I add a question?
Sure.
Which is that I think it's fair to say that the Congress is being ideologically expedient here, because you were in a sense, the architect of the lateral entry, right? That's the point that the BJP is making today. So yes, fair politics, everything is fair in love and politics, but let's not pretend this is about ideology. Go ahead, Sanjay Jha.
Yeah, Barkha, let me answer that question, but because in this panel you have three people who seem to be more sympathetic to the BJP and Mr. Modi's cause. Give me just 30 seconds.
Empathetic to lateral entry. Not necessarily that they've revealed their political leanings. Sandeep says no, but not the other two. I think Gurcharan is wanting to say something. Gurcharan, can we come out of this? I want to see what Gurcharan is saying. Can we come out of this?
Gurcharan,
Gurcharan, yeah.
My fear is that
coming back to you, Sanjay, right after this.
With the atmosphere that's being created at this moment, when social justice is trumping everything, that bad idea that was being talked about very seriously during UPA 1, pushed by the communists particularly, was the idea of reservations in the private sector. That why can't we must go for social justice in the private sector. And frankly, I mean, that is not how China came up. And we have to recognize that China became a middle-class society by creating an industrial revolution. And there were a lot of people who were in favor at that time, because I was very active. I was horrified at the prospect of it. And there were studies done by CII, etc., to see how many Dalits, how many OBCs there were in the corporate sector. And I just fear, frankly, that, I mean, I'm just taking it out of the immediate moment, Barkha, of a mistake that the government has made because it has not properly sold this idea.